come to us, ask the question, because the likelihood is if it's something that we can't support you with, we will probably know who can.
Welcome to Talking Shop, the Communities Inc. podcast. Episode 16. Who can I talk to about crime?
Hi everybody, welcome to our podcast. My name's Shamsha Chauhan. We're joined by a number of colleagues from Remedy today, so I'm just going to ask you guys to, if you just introduce yourselves and tell us what your role is at Remedy, and then we'll find out more about the organisation.
Thank you for inviting us. My name's Chelsea Lambert. I manage the Nottinghamshire Victim Care Service and also Derbyshire Victim Services.
My name's Molly. I'm one of the victim caseworkers and I also co-lead on hate crime with Praise. My share of hate crime strands, if you want to call it that way, are LGBTQ, misogyny and alternative subcultures.
Hi everyone, I'm Praise Adigo. I am an initial assessment worker with Remedy and also with a co-lead for hate crime support with Molly. The strands I support are disability, ageism and Islamophobia, as well as other religious hate crimes.
Right, great, thank you. So could you give us an overview of what is it that Remedy does?
Yeah, so Remedy are a restorative justice charity. We've been going since 1996. We started off as, the backstory of Remedy is that we started off in a converted toilet. We have moved on from that now.
Nice, okay.
But we are across the country and we deliver different services. So we offer victim services as we do in Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. We work in schools and we provide restorative justice, immediate justice, serious violence intervention. So we have a whole host of services and programmes within Remedy.
So what is restorative justice?
So restorative justice, it enables communication after there's been a crime or a conflict, and that's between the person who's been harmed and the person who's caused that harm. It's a voluntary process which can help those that are involved to talk about what's happened, the impact, and what each person needs really to help them move forward. So it can be in person, it can be through shuttle, so through letters, and it's just to open up those lines of communication to understand why. It's not always about forgiveness or an apology, it's just sometimes about why me. You know, for an example of a burglary case, why my house? Was you targeting me? Was you watching me? And the only person that can answer those questions is the person who's caused that harm.
Yeah, might be just because they walked by and the window was open.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It's an opportunist.
Yeah.
Or it could be that giving them some safety advice of actually, like you say, your window was open. Yeah. I took that chance. I didn't think of you as a person, but that's what's happened. I didn't target you as a person.
Yeah. So that's sort of restorative justice is part of the suite of sort of victim support services that you offer.
Yeah.
And I mean, how do people find out about the services that you offer?
Yeah, so for victim support here in Nottinghamshire, we get a big chunk of our referrals from the police force itself. So every day we have a download of crimes that have been committed within Nottinghamshire. Initially, each individual who, when the police officer gets to meet the person, they either ask them to opt in for victim support to contact them. Some would decline from the word go. But now, since December of last year, it's the full opt-out. So every crime that has been committed, we get a download of it the next morning, and then we'll reach out to each victim. Then they can decide to decline the support or carry on with the support. So that's a big chunk of our referral system. Other referrals too can be self-referral, so anybody can call into the service. Referrals also come from the council, the housing association, the British Transport Police, as well as any individual at all. It could just be someone who is concerned, a family member referring someone into the service for support. So it's a broad referral system.
Yeah. So, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but people can access your services even if they haven't reported a crime to the police, is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So a crime mustn't be reported and it mustn't be recent. So you could have had a crime that was committed 10 years ago when you were in America, and if something happens or you feel triggered or you actually become aware of this service, please feel free to reach out and we'll support you.
So, Praise, we were talking about the barriers that some people have in terms of accessing the service, but who are the victims? Who are we talking about when we talk about victim support and services for victims?
Yeah, so anybody out there can be a victim as long as something that is illegal has been done against you. I don't want to say as little as, because every crime has an impact. So what a crime that I may consider little might be to have a great impact on the individual so anything from burglary to having your house burned, to your car burned, to being assaulted, to having a partner abuse you. And more recently, we've even seen that aggressors within families are even the children assaulting the parents as well. If you have been bullied at school, you are racially abused, any form of hate crime, you are a victim. So anyone who has had something illegal done to them that has impacted on their physical, mental well-being is a victim of crime. So they deserve this. They are the people that we are reaching out to service.
Yeah. But anybody affected by a crime, really, yeah. And that could be even people close to the person that was maybe targeted by that offence.
Definitely, and I think it could be wider family members as well. So I could have been a victim of crime, but it's had an impact on my children or my partner, and they may not have experienced that crime as such, but they've seen the impact and they've seen the worry, the stress that I've gone through, and they may benefit from having someone to talk to of, since my mum's experienced this, it's left me feeling scared. So it's anyone. It could be wider communities. Something could have happened in the community and they've not necessarily witnessed it, but it's had an impact. They now feel scared to go into the local town because could this happen again? So anyone who's been impacted by a crime can access that support.
I think it's important to mention as well that I do find sometimes when people are like, I don't know whether to ask this question, or I don't know if you're going to know much about this or that. I think regardless of what it is, come to us, ask the question, because the likelihood is if it's something that we can't support you with, we will probably know who can. Yeah. So I always say to my service users, there's no silly questions, ask away. If something's on your mind, if I can't help, likelihood is either myself or another member of the team will know what direction to point you in. So it's definitely worth reaching out, even if there's just a little niggle on your mind.
Yeah. So I'm building up on that. We have a good signposting system within other partner services. So for instance, Nottingham Victim Support does not support victims of domestic abuse and sexual offences. So what we do, we have a good referral system with all the services that are specialised to support that service. And like Molly says, do not feel that the impact is too little or the crime I've experienced is too little. Like I was saying, I had someone I was supporting recently who his bike was stolen, but the impact was massive because the bike was his whole livelihood. He was using his bike to do delivery for food, and he was like, how do I pay my rent? How do I feed? How do I sustain myself? But you could have seen that crime and a bike stolen. It was just a bike theft. He'll get another one. But it had so much impact on him. Yeah. It could also be a person of a fraud case, and you didn't lose any money, but you feel very silly. Why did I fall for this? Don't let the shame or how little the crime is hold you back from reaching out for support. Yeah.
I think we hear a lot as well from people that we reach out to or that the initial assessment team reaches out to that then come to the caseworker team for ongoing support. I think we hear a lot about, I don't want to take up your time because there's people that are going through worse things than what I'm going through, and it's about validating those feelings of this is what you've experienced, this is how it's impacted you, let's focus on that. It doesn't matter who else has been through what, like we've said, throughout everything's going to have a different impact on each individual, but I think we do hear a lot, go and dedicate your time to someone else that they've been through worse, and we're here for everybody.
I suppose that goes back to that person feeling heard, feeling valued, that they are important. So yeah.
So when people do come to you, what do you find? What needs do they have? I appreciate obviously people experiencing different crimes might have different reactions, but generally speaking, what is it that they're looking for when they come to you?
As you've mentioned, it's different for each person. So we understand that. So what we do is a bespoke support plan, a bespoke needs assessment. So no two impacts the same. We don't know what someone's experienced previously. So needs often focus on safety, feeling heard, feeling understood. That could be through different services. It could be empowerment. And that's what our needs assessment looks at. So what does that person need to help them cope and recover from the impact of the crime? And we'll put that together. And as a restorative organisation, we work together to meet those needs, to empower that person, to help them cope and recover.
Yeah, and I guess that's even more important when you're working with a diverse group of people. I mean, you know, Molly, you mentioned, you know, LGBT, alternative subcultures. That must be even more important when different people with different characteristics and backgrounds will have different needs, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, you do find that a big part of it is advocating for your service users as well. Obviously, we're talking about people that have already faced, you know, all types of barriers and challenges. So when it comes to, like I say, advocating for themselves, it is about, like Chelsea was saying as well, empowering them to do so. But sometimes it does take a little bit of a push where, you know, if you start advocating for them and helping them with that. An example was I started working with a lady, alternative subculture.
So could you just tell us what alternative subculture is?
Yes, sorry. So alternative subcultures is anybody that belongs to a community that's like rock, punk, goth, alternative subcultures. Again, she was being horribly harassed by her neighbour, and obviously all because of the way that she looked. And when I first started working with her, she couldn't make a phone call for herself. And, you know, I worked with her and I'd start off making those phone calls for her, and then I'd sit with her while she made a phone call, shaking in her boots, bless her. And it got to a point where I would go around for a home visit and she'd answer the door and she'd go, "Oh my God, Molly, so I phoned the council, for example, and they forgot your name and they've met you enough times, so I told them straight." And I was like, oh my God. It's like 4 months ago, you wouldn't even make a phone call. So it is about, you know, even if you do have to step in at the beginning and initiate that, you know, hopefully, well, the hope is that they will get to that point where they do feel empowered and are able to advocate for themselves.
I was going to ask the next question, what are the benefits that people feel? And, you know, what you've just said is part of that is about being more empowered.
Yeah, definitely.
Empowered themselves. What other benefits would people that access your services feel, do you think?
For one thing, they'll feel heard. A number of people, particularly individuals who do not have immediate family or friends for support and live alone, they oftentimes feel isolated, because when they're impacted by a crime, impact of a crime could be emotional, psychological, where people start to isolate and, you know, fall into depression and many other mental health illnesses. So stepping in at that point, allowing the person to feel heard, to feel there's somebody out there who listens, and then like Molly being a caseworker, giving you the one-on-one visit. She talked about the home visit, calling on you, having someone to be there for you when you need that. That's a great benefit to the service. So you're heard, you're walked with, you're you know, you have the support that you need. And the ongoing support is not limited. We don't have a time frame for support for each individual. So it's as long as you need the services are for you, and it's free. So why not step in and take it?
That's great, yeah.
I think as well, just to add from what Praise was saying, there's so many benefits to the service. I think improving someone's outlook, their attitude, it could be their social interaction, integrating them back into the community. And when I say this, the team hear this quite a lot, but they are amazing at what they do. They literally save people's lives. A lot of people who access our service, their mental health has been impacted since the crimes happened, and the caseworkers, the team, they'll integrate them into mental health services, and I think sometimes the team themselves don't recognise how they can change or save someone's life. It has so many benefits if someone's ready actually to access that support. Yeah.
It's about feelings of it's about feelings of safety as well, isn't it? Another massive benefit. You know, you have people that have been burgled or something's happened to them on the street and they feel like they can't, well, either leave the house or they don't want to go back to their house, and it is all about working with them to see, okay, well, what can we do to help you feel safe? How safe do you feel right now? How safe would you like to feel? And asking them as well, I think going back on what we said before about tailoring, you know, the support to each individual, because each case is unique and different, and asking them, okay, well, what do you feel like you need to feel safer? And then working with them to reach that goal or to get as close to that goal as you can. And then coming full circle, like Prey said, that then helps them feel heard, informed, and because you're listening to their concerns and you've asked them, okay, well, what do you feel like you need? And it's like, oh, okay, so you're not just telling me what you think I should be doing. Yeah. You want to know what I feel like I need, and you're going to help me get there.
I guess that's what makes your sort of services victim-led, as it were, in terms of, you know, being directed and guided by the needs of the people that are accessing it. I mean, and that support, I mean, for anybody listening to this podcast, that support can sometimes be quite simple as well. I mean, we say on our Stand By Me training, support is one of the interventions. And I always say that, you know, just asking somebody, you know, are you okay? How are you? What you're really saying is that you care, you know, and when something happens to somebody, you know, whether it's a criminal offence or whether it's just something, an unpleasant incident, and nobody says anything to them, they often feel, you know, alone. They often feel alienated. They maybe, you know, end up feeling that people don't care. I always tell the story on the training that I live in a small town just outside Leicester, lived there 20 years with no problems. Result of the EU referendum in June 2016, within days, I was involved in 2 racist incidents. And the second one was this woman ended up with this woman walking away from me shouting racial abuse. And I remember just standing there thinking, what is going on? You know, it's a bit of a strange time. And this guy came over and said, hey, are you all right? And he stood there, he chatted to me. I hadn't even seen him. He'd been waiting at the bus stop. He stood there, he chatted to me for a few minutes, made sure I was okay, asked me if I wanted a drink, was I all right getting home? And you know what? I just felt so much better. I thought, well, she wasn't very pleasant, but you know what? It was refreshing to know that a stranger had noticed something, recognised that it was wrong, and cared enough to just come over and touch base with me. And I always say, you know, I'm not that fragile that I would have gone home and thought, I'm never going back out again. It's only a very small high street, it's only about 100 yards. But if that had happened to my parents that are in their 80s, they probably wouldn't have wanted to step outside again. So even just, you know, for those that are listening, if something happens to somebody, even just acknowledging it, checking in with them, can make a real big difference, can't it?
Definitely, and I am sorry that is something you've experienced, but you're absolutely right. It is about having someone just to check in sometimes. As Praise mentioned, she works as a part of the initial assessment team, and that is it's Praise's role and the team's role to check in. That's their role. Check in. How are things? How are you? How have you been able to go out since the incidents happened? And, you know, they may not want that ongoing support from our caseworkers, but as you've said, just, okay, we hear you. We hear that that's something you've experienced, and I'm sorry that is something you've experienced. Tell me about that. And sometimes people just want to be heard, and that's all that they need. And obviously, if they need an ongoing support, then we can provide that as well.
Yeah, and one thing we do notice as initial assessors is that there's not immediate impact of the crime. Sometimes it's the aftermath. It takes a while, and then someone begins to feel the psychological impact of what they had experienced. So having to know that at the first initial point, because most times our contact is 24 hours after the crime when we get the report from the police. So knowing that, yeah, when I had this, I didn't feel I needed them, because most times people say, I'll deal with it, I have friends and family for support. But having to know that there's a service like this, you have some people call back. I had a lady who called back after 4 weeks and said, I know I had spoken to you guys before, but I think I still don't feel right. And we had to move her on to ongoing support. So the impact may not be immediate, but we're always there to follow through when we need the support, yeah.
So, you know, I'm sure at times you're dealing with people that are quite traumatised, that have been through, you know, pretty horrendous experiences. How do you look after yourselves when you're sort of hearing those stories? I mean, does it does it affect you, or how do you manage your emotions around that?
It's all about well-being. Obviously, I think you have to, know not to take your work home with you, but also I think within, Notts Victim Care itself, like managers like Chelsea and our other coordinators that are all just absolutely excellent. Like, I dealt with a really horrible case a couple of weeks ago, and it was one that it was a big safeguarding concern, and it dragged out for weeks. And, if Chelsea wasn't checking in, my coordinator Gina was, and, we always had those team meetings and those debriefs, and, Chelsea will say, just go and take half an hour away from your screen, go for a walk, have a bath, have a cup of tea, anything. And I think a big part of that, aside from looking after yourself outside of work, whether it's whatever hobbies you've got, whatever you do in your free time, it's about feeling looked after in the role that you're in as well.
Yeah.
And you're right, it can be really, really difficult. We're human beings ourselves. We've got our thoughts and feelings. We're doing this job because we care. But it can have an impact. And as Molly said, like, our well-being, our debriefs are really important, but sometimes we might need a bit more than that. We're really lucky within Remedy that we do have a support service external that's confidential for us as staff. And if that leads on to counselling, we can access that ourselves. But it's always about knowing that we're cared for as well. And as Molly said, that we reach out for that support if we notice that we're being triggered, or actually I'm hearing about someone who's really struggling and I'm affected by that. What do I need to be able to support me, so then I can support that victim moving forward?
I always say, don't I, we're human beings looking after human beings, but we're employed by human beings. And it's the only way that I put it whenever anyone asks me about, how do you find work, what are all your managers like? And it's like, it's just so refreshing being a human being employed by another human being.
And within ourselves, there's quite a close-knit team. Everybody seems to support each other. We recently also got trained to be first mental health first aiders, so everybody has that training. And so when you feel that the colleague, hasn't chatted up a bit for a while, or, looks different, you could just chat and say, how you doing? I'm here. And so that helps the team move on together,
You notice it on teams sometimes, don't you? If you're ever on like a tea and biscuits call or on a team meeting and there's someone that's kind of sat a bit quieter and you think, they're not usually this quiet, so drop them a message. You seem a bit quiet, how you doing? But yeah, like Prey says, I think we do look after each other as well within the team, which is lovely.
I think that's really important with people that work with other people that maybe go through horrendous experiences or that are vulnerable in some way, that the people offering that support, also need that support as well, or need somewhere to sort of download or talk to. So Nottingham in particular over the last few years has had a number of high profile incidents where people have been murdered, people have been hurt, and there's a lot going right now across the country, which again may reoccur. We may see some of those types of incidents surfacing. Have you noticed any difference in the groups of people that are accessing your service, or does it remain mainly sort of stable in terms of the average sort of service users?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I do as a part of my job, looking at trends and where our support's needed, where we focus next. But I would say since the pandemic, we have seen different trends. So we've seen an increase in reports of hate crime. We've seen an increase of reporting theft and violent crimes, and different areas of where crimes happen in different districts. So we do see trends, and what we try and do is then, when we identify them, focus our work and our support on those areas.
So some people might access some barriers. We mentioned it earlier in terms of the referral, that some people will refuse the access to the service. What do you think some of those barriers are, and why do you think people are refusing that help?
Yeah, I think we kind of identified three major barriers to the service. The first is the lack of awareness that a service like this exists. But thankfully, the police force itself have been creating quite a lot of awareness. So every time they speak with someone who has reported a crime, they do mention that Nottingham Victim Support will contact them. And then we've done quite a lot of outreaches and to create awareness. We have our flyers pasted in almost all the GPs within Nottinghamshire. So that kind of is combating that barrier. And the second barrier we'll have is the cultural and religious background of quite a number of victims. The victim blaming issue, where people hold back because, they've been brought up in a culture where they do not want to, don't say it out, let's solve it within the family. That victim shaming is kind of one of the big barriers to people coming and accessing our service. The third significant barrier as well is the fear of reporting it. People are not so trusting of the policing system, so they don't want to come out and report a crime. So these are the three major barriers we've identified, what withholds people back. But we know with the constant outreaches and creating awareness, people are beginning to embrace it and self-referring to.
Yeah, based on what Praise has just said about obviously all the outreach that we're doing, I was recently just obviously walking around Nottingham, and I had a big bag of leaflets and posters with me, and my main focus was on alternative subcultures, because we do find that we don't actually get many referrals. And obviously thinking about it, it was, well, is it just because it's, underreported? Is it because, again, like Praise said, they're not aware of the service? So I had a morning walking around Nottingham and sort of speaking to people at Blue Banana, speaking to people at Damage Society and Rock City and Pot World, and they'd all said, the same, that they weren't actually aware of the service. And I think another thing that was actually quite sad was that they'd just kind of learnt to deal with it and just accept the comments that are made towards them about how they decide to dress and everything else. And you could kind of see the cogs turning into their heads when, speaking to them about the service, and it was almost like they were thinking, actually, no, I shouldn't have to put up with that, which, no, you absolutely shouldn't. So hopefully, off the back of that, we might see some increase in referrals, but we should have posters up in, obviously, the shops that I've mentioned, and also on the back of the toilet stalls in places like Pot World and Rock City, which is exciting. So have a look out if you're ever out and about in there. We need it verifying that they're actually up.
And I guess that outreach is even more important, given that people don't have to report a crime to access your services. So I think that's one of the myths that's out there, that they can only access your services. And people may, Praise mentioned a number of reasons why people might have barriers to this, and it might be about the lack of trust and confidence in the police. So they may want some support or need some support, but they don't want to report the crime. Exactly,
and I think for people to know as well that it's a confidential service, it's their information, so what they want to speak about, it's confidential to them and it's free. People often think, that do I have to pay for that service? And it's no, that's free for anyone in Nottinghamshire to access. And if they want to report to the police afterwards, we'll support them through that process. If they don't, that's absolutely fine, and we'll still offer the same level of support to them.
I was going to say, one of the things that you can help with is reporting that crime. So they might want to come to you first, and with a bit of support, report it from there.
We can go to the police station with them if they're wanting to make that statement. We can report on behalf of them if they don't want to make that call, but they consent for us to do that. If they want that information shared, we can work with them to do that.
So I know earlier you were saying a lot of people come to you because they're referred from the police, but also people can self-refer. For those listeners who maybe just want to know how that can happen, where they can find out about you, how can people get hold of you, and where can they hear about you?
Visit the website, give us a call on the helpline. Obviously, we are aware that sometimes it is a bit different, giving someone a phone call, people are a bit apprehensive to pick up the phone. If you follow our social media, we always post information about any community outreach that we're going to be doing, so you can have a look, see when we're going to be out and about, and you can pop down and see one of us. I've recently been to visit the Hope Food Bank, which is in Beeston, and I've agreed with them that I'll be going down once a month. I'll be sitting there in the mornings, so if you did want to speak to somebody in person about the service, pop down, have a free breakfast, we can have a chat. But again, that will be posted in advance on our social media what days I'm going to be down there. So again, if you did want to speak to one of us in person, follow the social media, and there's always information there about where our whereabouts are going to be.
Great. Thank you.
Also, within your local communities, be it at the library, be it like Molly has said, at the food bank, and also we have created community points. It's a community points program that we have just recently launched, and we have people in different communities reaching out to serve as assessors themselves of people's needs, because we know that they deal with the locals directly. They know what their needs are, and so they can now serve as a referral point to us. We're going to train a few of those who have shown interest to be assessors on their own. We're also going to equip them with some hardware in terms of personal alarms, doorbell alarms. These are things they can give out to victims, so there's an immediate support, and then refer them on to the system. So a lot of communities points, be it local religious centers, community centers, they're actually serving for us as community touch points. So you can walk into your local community center and ask for support, and they will refer you to us as well.
You know, it's great to sort of hear, you know, how encouraging you are in terms of sort of making people feel more comfortable. People that are already probably feeling vulnerable or hurt, and that's great. And I'm just wondering, sort of, what plans do you have for the future? So you're already doing a whole range of support in terms of assessments, casework, outreach, restorative justice. What other plans do you have sort of looking forward to the future within
We have so
Nottingham?
many.
So tell us about a few of the things you've got coming on board.
So we've been live since October 2023, and we've already achieved so much in that time, but we definitely have so much more to do. So we have a youth service within Nottinghamshire Victim Care called Got Your Back. It's brand new to Nottinghamshire. Since 2023, and it's about supporting young people. We really want to develop that into schools and colleges, doing drop-in sessions, as Molly's mentioned, but within schools and colleges. So a young person doesn't have to sign up to support. It's just, you know, our caseworkers will go into the school and it's like, oh, Chelsea, can I just have a chat? So that's an area that we want to develop. As Praise has mentioned about our community points, we've got 7 on board at the moment. We want to develop that because we know, as we've mentioned, people don't feel comfortable to pick up the phone, but they might feel comfortable going to their local mosque and saying, can you reach out for support for me?
We have a plan to carry out like a joint outreach for hate crime, Islamophobia specifically. I'm working with an amazing person within Tell Mama, and we have actually printed specific flyers and posters for Tell Mama and Nottinghamshire Victim Support. It's going to be out in public places. We have some stickers. We're sticking local public bathrooms or toilets so people can see that. Yeah. It's just telling people, anybody who has been a victim of Islamophobia, reach out. The service is there. In September, we're actually going to be present at the Market Square. We're going to have a stall there, and for a few days. Most want to do it through the weekend when the place is a bit busy and bubbling. Mm-hmm. So if you pass by, then stop by, pick up a flyer, talk to us. So it's a joint thing with Tell Mama and Victim Support. We're also looking out to having lots of people join in, and like Chelsea said, get people on board to serve as referral points for us as well.
I think as well, when university starts up again, we're usually quite present at the wellbeing fairs, especially at Nottingham Trent, so both at the Clifton campus and the Southall campus as well. We are usually out and about. That's
great. So going to be getting even busier in the future.
Unfortunately, I don't want to say we hope so, but unfortunately, if people are a victim of crime or experience something, then hopefully, so the access that support.
Hopefully they'll find their way to you, and you'll be able to at least sort of help them through that.
Yeah.
Really. Well, thank you very much. Praise, Molly and Chelsea, thank you very much for coming along. Thank you for everything that you do. Wish you well, and I'm sure we will have you back again and find out how these new services are developing. So thank you very much.
Thank you
for having us.
Yeah.